Hey guys, Happy New Year! I wanted to thank all of you for all your love and support these last few months. For celebrating the new year, I compiled some of the previous tapes I've uploaded into a 2-hour special. Enjoy!
I found this tape a few years ago when I was at an old vehicle dealer shop. It was hidden in the passenger seat compartment of a random truck. I don't know who recorded this, but I'm beginning to think I made a mistake being nosy. It seems like it's a tape recording of a highway trucker. I'll do my best to sound like one.
I've been driving rigs for almost 15 years now. Nights blur into mornings, highways stretch like veins across the country, and the only real company I keep is the rumble of the engine and the flicker of headlights in the mirrors. It's quiet work. Too quiet sometimes. You start to hear things, or maybe just start noticing the silence itself, pressing against the cab like a weight. This trip was supposed to be routine. A haul from Dallas up through Oklahoma, cutting across state lines, then east to Memphis. I'd driven the route a dozen times before, but that night, everything felt heavier. I hadn't slept much, 3 hours in some truck stop lot where the lights flickered and buzzed. When I climbed back into the cab, my reflection in the windshield looked unfamiliar. Pale, eyes ringed dark. A man running on fumes. The first hours were fine. Miles of asphalt, faint glow of distant towns. But around midnight, the highway emptied out completely. Not just quiet, dead. No cars in front, no headlights behind, just me, the truck, and the long stretch of blacktop. I turned on the radio to keep awake, but all I got was static and faint voices drifting in and out, too garbled to make sense of. I shut it off. The silence was worse. I kept checking the mirrors, half expecting to see someone there. Sometimes I thought I did, just a brief shimmer of headlights way back, but whenever I blinked, they were gone. I leaned forward, gripping the wheel tighter. Fatigue plays tricks, I told myself. But then I saw it. Up ahead, on the shoulder, stood a child. Small, motionless, facing the road. Her white dress seemed to catch the high beams, but her face was shadowed. I slowed, blinked hard, rubbed my eyes, but she didn't move. Didn't even flinch as my truck thundered past. For a moment, I thought I caught her reflection in the side mirror. Still standing there, still watching. I should have stopped. I should have turned back, but my foot pressed the gas harder, and the night swallowed her behind me. And then, 5 miles later, she was there again. The thing about long-haul nights is that your mind starts playing games. Sleep deprivation gnaws at your thoughts, and every shadow seems to twitch just beyond your vision. I kept telling myself what I saw back there was a trick, exhaust, reflections, fatigue, but the image of that girl, standing there on the shoulder, refused to leave me. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time stretches weird out here. The highway was empty, except for the occasional flicker of a broken streetlight that barely lit the lanes. My hands ached from gripping the wheel. My eyes stung, but I couldn't sleep, not with that image burned into my retinas. Then I started noticing other things. Movement in the mirrors, just at the edges. Glimpses of something that shouldn't be there. A figure leaning out from the darkness, vanishing when I turned my head. Once, I swear, I saw the child's reflection sitting in the passenger seat, staring at me, lips moving like she was whispering. But the seat was empty. I tried to shake it off,
flicked the headlights between high and low beams, adjusted the mirrors, tapped the radio, anything to distract myself. But the shadows kept coming. They seemed to follow me, slipping along the lines of the road, growing longer and darker with every mile. At one rest stop, I pulled over to take a breather, leaned against the cab, and lit a cigarette. The lot was deserted, but in the reflection of the truck's side window, I saw footprints forming in the gravel, walking towards me, step by step. I spun around. Nothing. The gravel was untouched. By the time I climbed back in, my pulse was racing. My reflection in the windshield no longer looked like me. Eyes too wide, pale skin, mouth tight with tension. I stared at it for a long second, then shook my head and tried to focus on the road. That's when the headlights appeared in my rearview mirror. A truck, distant, following, steady, slow, but no one passed me. No horn, no taillights flickering, just a presence, inching closer with the inevitability of a predator. And then I realized, no matter how fast I drove, it never got further away.
By the time I hit the next stretch of highway, the weight of exhaustion was unbearable. My eyelids felt glued shut, muscles trembling from the monotony of the road. I knew I should have pulled over somewhere, anywhere, but the thought of stopping filled me with a creeping dread. Something told me that if I stopped, it wouldn't just be the highway I'd be alone with. The night air had grown colder, the kind that seeps through the cab even with the heater on full blast. The headlights bounced off the reflective mile markers, one after another, and I noticed something impossible. The numbers weren't changing as fast as they should be. Mile after mile, 112, 112, 112. My stomach churned. Time wasn't moving. I glanced in the mirrors again. The shadows were closer now, flickering just at the edges. And then I saw her again. The girl. She stood at the exact same mile marker, staring directly at me. But this time, her eyes, they weren't human. Empty, black voids, reflecting the dim highway lights. I swerved, almost hitting the guardrail. My hands shook. I tried to breathe, tried to rationalize. Maybe this was sleep deprivation. Maybe I'd passed out and was dreaming while driving. But deep down, I knew it wasn't a dream. Then the radio clicked on by itself. Low static at first, then whispers, names, my name,
Road trip.
Joshua. The voice hissed. I slammed the dial off. Nothing. The cab was silent again. My pulse pounded in my ears, my vision blurred. I considered calling the police, but the cell signal had dropped miles ago. And then the truck behind me honked. Not a normal honk. Long, drawn out, warped, like it was coming from a broken speaker inside my skull rather than the highway. I slammed my foot to the gas, trying to escape it, but the vehicle and the mirror stayed the same distance behind me. I blinked. It wasn't a truck anymore. It was her, the girl, standing on the asphalt as though she was walking beside the cab, matching my speed, keeping pace. I could see the empty voids of her eyes, and for the first time, she smiled. I jerked the wheel. The tires screeched, and then I saw something even worse. A figure in my passenger seat. Another shadow, taller this time, reaching its hand toward me. And just like that, the highway went completely dark.
When my eyes adjusted, I realized I hadn't crashed. The truck was still on the road, or what I thought was the road. Thick fog had rolled in, so dense I could barely see 10 feet ahead. The headlights barely cut through it, casting a weak, sickly glow on the asphalt. I could hear the engine trembling beneath me, more from tension than from mechanics. The mirrors were useless now. Shadows slithered at the edge of my vision, always disappearing when I turned my head. The girl was gone. At least I thought she was, but I felt her. The sense of being watched crawled across my skin, a prickling, persistent dread. The mile markers had vanished. Every line on the road blurred, melted into the fog. My mind, already frayed from exhaustion, started replaying images. The footprints at the rest stop, the reflection in the side window, the passenger seat shadow. They were all too real, too vivid to be tricks of the mind. Then I saw it. Another truck in the distance. Dim headlights cutting through the fog. Relief hit me at first, until I realized it wasn't moving. Or maybe it was, but it moved in a wrong rhythm. Every time I blinked, it appeared closer. And behind it, through the fog, more figures emerged. People? No. Faces obscured, bodies twisted in impossible ways, standing in the middle of the highway. I pressed the horn, screamed, anything to warn them. But the sound was muffled, swallowed by the fog. My hands gripped the wheel so tight they were white. I wanted to stop, to get out, to run, but the cab felt alive, pressing me back into the seat. Something in the fog was controlling it, or maybe controlling me. And then, faintly, the radio whispered again. A single distorted phrase, looping. Don't stop. Don't sleep. I slammed my foot to the gas. I drove faster than I had in years, but the fog thickened. I could barely see the hood of the truck. Then headlights appeared behind me. Not just one. Dozens. And I knew with a sinking certainty that the girl was somewhere in that mass of light, waiting. I tried to turn off the highway, any exit, but the signs weren't real. They twisted and shimmered, letters bleeding like ink in water. Every turn I took led me back to the same foggy stretch. And then I saw her again. Closer than ever. Standing in the middle of the road, her empty eyes reflecting the headlights, smiling. And this time she was holding something. The thing she held was small, black, and humming. At first I thought it was a radio, but the sound it made wasn't static. It was my own heartbeat, distorted and amplified, echoing in the cab. I slammed on the brakes. Nothing. The truck didn't slow. The wheel felt like it was frozen in my hands. The fog was alive now, swirling around the cab, pressing against the windows, filling the mirrors with shadows that weren't reflections. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The girl didn't move, but somehow she was closer, hovering at the edge of my vision, just beyond the headlights. And then I saw them, all the figures. The shadows, the things I had glimpsed on the road, in mirrors, in reflections, emerging from the fog, lining the highway. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Their faces blank, their eyes hollow, all staring at me. I slammed a horn again, screamed into the steering wheel, but it was like the sound dissolved before it reached them. I felt my eyelids droop. I couldn't fight it. Sleep clawed at me, heavier than any exhaustion I had ever known. My body sagged in the seat, my vision swimming, and I realized the highway wasn't going to end.
The fog wasn't going to lift, and the figures weren't going to let me go. Somewhere in the distance, a mile marker appeared. I blinked. 112. I blinked again. 112. It never changed. And then I understood. The highway wasn't moving forward. I wasn't moving forward. I was trapped in the same stretch of road, the same mile marker, in a loop I could never escape. The girl raised the black object higher. A pulse of light shot into the cab, and suddenly the engine roared like it was alive. I felt my skull split with the vibration, the radio whispering my name, the fog pressing through my ears. And then, darkness. I woke up hours later, or was it days, sitting on the shoulder of the same road, the cab silent, the fog gone. The mirrors reflected only me. The highway was empty, but when I checked the mile marker, it read 112. And somewhere, far behind me, I heard the faintest sound of a horn. I found 2 tapes in an old yard sale. They were just $10, but I was really curious about them, so I gave in and bought it. From what I understand, it's about this detective who came into contact with some entity on a television. It sounds weird. I did some digging and couldn't find out anything about the guy. Anyway, enjoy the tape. The clock struck 9. I didn't need to glance at the hands on the wall. My body knew it. Every night, 9 p.m., sharp. And as if on cue, the old TV in the corner of my apartment flickered to life. I'd stopped trying to unplug it weeks ago. No matter what I did, cut the power, remove the antenna, even smashed the damn remote, the screen always hummed alive with that snowstorm of static. Then came the voice. "Good evening, detective. Rough day." That clenched my jaw. He wasn't asking. He knew. He always knew. Detective Daniel Cade, 12 years on the force. I've stared down killers with dead eyes, liars with silver tongues, but this voice, this thing inside the static, was something I could never pin down. And that made me hate it. "Another murder, wasn't it? The girl in the alley, red scarf." My stomach turned. He was right. Again. The rules were always the same. He offered information, glimpses of the future. In return, he demanded pieces of me, personal details, little things at first. The name of my mother, the street I grew up on, my first crush. It escalated slowly, like a predator testing boundaries. Tonight, I gave him nothing. "Come now, Daniel, you need me. Tomorrow your captain will call you in early. You'll miss breakfast if you don't stock the fridge tonight." I hated that he was usually right. Hated that despite every instinct, I'd obey. And yet, there was always that 5% chance, that slim window where he was wrong. Last week, he swore I'd find a suspect at the docks. Instead, I wasted 6 hours chasing shadows, while the real killer slipped through my hands.
That error bought me a little hope, proof that he wasn't infallible, proof I could fight back. But when I stayed silent too long, his tone shifted.
Tell me something, detective. Tonight, the name of your first partner on the force. Give it to me, and I'll tell you when you will die.
I gripped the arm of my chair, knuckles white. My first partner had been murdered on duty. Saying his name felt like defiling his grave. Go to hell, I muttered.
We already live there.
The next night, the ritual began again. 9 p.m., TV on, static.
Daniel, tomorrow night you'll find a man with a knife waiting in the stairwell. He'll try to kill you. If I'm wrong, you can turn me off forever.
A challenge. A wager. The first time he'd ever offered me freedom. My pulse quickened. I'm not giving you a damn thing in return, I spat.
That's fine. Survival is payment enough.
I barely slept, every creak of the building keeping me awake. By the following evening, I was wound tighter than piano wire. When I finally stepped into the stairwell, hand on my service pistol, I saw nothing. No man, no knife, just empty shadows. For once, he was wrong. Back inside, I poured myself a drink, shaking with relief. At 9 p.m. sharp, the screen lit again.
You enjoyed that, didn't you? Thought you had escaped me. But you owe me, Daniel.
I don't owe you anything. You're losing your grip.
Do I sound weak? Tomorrow, a woman will come to you. She will ask for protection. Deny her, and she dies. Accept her, and you die.
I froze. That wasn't a prediction. That was a trap.
Give me your sister's middle name. Only then will I tell you which choice keeps you alive.
My sister, the one person I still cared about, he was circling closer to the things I refused to give. The next morning, I walked into the precinct, and there she was, a woman I'd never seen before, sitting on the bench outside my office. Pale, nervous, eyes darting toward me like she'd been waiting all night. "Detective Kate," she whispered, "please, I need protection. Someone's after me." The world tilted, my skin went cold. The voice hadn't been wrong. That night, 9 p.m., I didn't wait for the static. The TV came alive anyway.
You see, Daniel, the future is already written. The only question is, whose blood fills the page?
I grabbed the remote, raised it like a weapon. My finger hovered, my chest ached with rage and fear.
Choose wrong, and you'll finally know what it feels like to be on the other side of the investigation.
The screen went black, and I was left staring at my own reflection, wondering if I'd just been handed the case that would kill me.
I don't usually believe in this kind of stuff, but I found something tonight that I can't explain. Hidden in an old box at a thrift store, there was a VHS tape with no label, just the words, "Watch alone." Curious, I brought it home, popped it in, and what I saw, it felt like it was meant for me. The footage shows a house out in the middle of nowhere, a storm raging, and a presence inside that doesn't seem human. The further it goes, the more I realized the house is alive. And if the whispers from the tape are anything to go by, it's not done with its next visitor. I watched it all the way through, and now I can't stop hearing things in my own house. So, I'm sharing it here. Watch carefully, and maybe, just maybe, you'll notice what I didn't at first. This is the story of the forgotten house, and what I saw inside might be closer than you think.
I was driving home late at night when the rain began. Heavy drops battered the windshield and my wipers struggled to keep up. I should have stayed on the main road, but the GPS rerouted me down an old country lane. The trees loomed close, their branches scraping against the roof like bony fingers. Then, without warning, my car sputtered, coughed, and died. No cell signal, no houses for miles, except one. Through the sheets of rain, I saw a dark outline sitting back from the road. A house. Its windows were hollow sockets, yet faint light flickered behind one of them. Desperation drove me forward. My shoes sunk in the mud as I trudged up the broken path. The front door was ajar. It moaned open wider as I touched it, like it had been waiting. The smell inside was unbearable. Damp wood, mold, and something faintly metallic. I stepped into the foyer, where wallpaper peeled from the walls in strips, exposing splintered wood beneath. "Hello?" My voice echoed unnaturally, bouncing back at me distorted. Somewhere upstairs, floorboards creaked. Someone was here. I considered leaving, but lightning cracked, illuminating the hall. On the wall opposite me hung photographs, dozens of them. Families, smiling faces, children in tidy clothes. But every photograph had the eyes scratched out. Another creak upstairs, closer this time. I froze, my breath shallow. Then, from the top of the staircase, a figure appeared. Small, still, a child's silhouette against the faint glow of lightning through a broken window. "Are you lost?" I asked softly. The child didn't move, didn't answer. Instead, they tilted their head sharply like a puppet with its strings pulled too far. Then, without warning, they began to crawl down the stairs on all fours, fast, impossibly fast. I stumbled backward as the sound of nails scraping wood filled the house. The storm outside was deafening, but nothing drowned out the sound of that thing rushing toward me. I bolted back into the rain, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The child, or whatever it was, didn't follow me outside. I turned, expecting to see the doorway empty, but it wasn't. The figure stood there framed by the rotting wood, watching. Lightning illuminated its face, or rather the absence of one. Smooth skin stretched where eyes, nose, and mouth should have been. I stumbled backward into the mud, breath fogging in the cold air. When the thunder rolled, the figure was gone. The door hung open, swaying slightly in the storm. Against every instinct, I went back in. Maybe it was madness, maybe it was shock, but something about the place pulled at me, whispering beneath the sound of the rain. Inside, the photographs had changed. The scratched-out eyes were gone, Instead, every face now stared directly at me. Their expressions were no longer joyful but grim, their smiles erased. The sound of dripping water led me deeper into the house, past the ruined living room, through a hallway where floorboards sagged beneath my weight. I found it, a heavy wooden door at the far end. A draft seeped through the cracks, carrying with it the smell of rust and damp earth. The basement. The handle was ice cold, and when I turned it, the hinges shrieked. Stairs descended into blackness. My flashlight, thankfully still in my bag, cast a narrow beam down. At the bottom, the walls were stone, slick with moisture. Old shelves lined the sides, filled with jars of cloudy liquid. Shapes floated inside, some small, some disturbingly large. Then I saw it. On the far wall, hundreds of photographs, like the ones upstairs, were pinned in crooked rows. But these weren't scratched out. Each one was recent, modern. People caught mid-step at gas stations, grocery stores, sidewalks, random strangers. And there, at the very center, was a new photograph. Me, standing outside the house in the rain, taken only minutes ago. Behind me, the basement door slammed shut.
The slam echoed through the basement like a gunshot. I lunged for the door, but the handle wouldn't budge. No matter how hard I pulled, it stayed locked, as if welded shut. The light of my flashlight flickered, and for a moment, I was left in darkness. Then came the whispers. At first, faint, like a breeze brushing against my ears. But they grew louder, overlapping voices speaking in tones too low to understand. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all murmuring at once. I spun the beam across the shelves. The jars trembled. Something inside them stirred, pressing against the glass like they wanted out. "Stop," I hissed to no one. The voices didn't stop. They focused. A single phrase rose above the chaos, repeated again and again until the sound drilled into my skull. "Join us." The photos on the wall rattled. One by one, they fell to the ground, leaving empty spaces. But when I bent down, the faces had changed. Every photo now showed me. Me, asleep. Me, walking. Me, eating. Moments I didn't remember being photographed. Then, footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. On the stairs. I swung the flashlight toward the sound. The faceless child stood halfway down, frozen. But this time, it wasn't alone. Behind it, more shapes crowded the stairs. Tall, short, hunched, crawling. Their outlines were human, but their heads twitched and jerked unnaturally like broken dolls. The whispers rose into a shriek. My ears rang, blood pounding in my skull. I dropped the flashlight, and in the second of darkness, I felt movement all around me. Cold hands brushed against my arms, my back, my neck. When I grabbed the light again and lifted it, the figures were gone. But the photographs weren't. They had returned to the wall, only now every picture showed me down here, in the basement, surrounded by pale silhouettes. The final photo was different. It showed me slumped on the ground, my throat cut open, and the shadows began to move again. The whispers didn't fade this time. They pressed against my skull, vibrating inside my bones. I clutched the flashlight like a weapon, sweeping its weak beam across the basement. Then I saw it. On the floor beneath the photographs. A symbol carved deep into the stone. circles interwoven with jagged lines soaked dark as if with old blood. My flashlight quivered in my hand, but the marks seemed to pulse, beating in rhythm with my heart. I stumbled backward, but my foot struck something. One of the jars had fallen, glass shattering across the stone. The liquid inside seeped across the floor, thick and oily. Something small and shriveled writhed in the mess, twitching as though it had just woken. The whispers changed pitch, rising with urgency. My skin burned. I looked down to see lines forming on my forearm, red welts that traced the same symbol from the floor. I tried to rub it off, scratch it away, but the mark only grew darker, etched deeper into my flesh. A scream cut through the noise, high, piercing, childlike. I whipped around. The faceless child stood inches from me now, its smooth head tilting as if studying me. It reached out one small hand and pressed its palm against my chest. Ice shot through me. My vision blurred. For a second, the basement dissolved. I was outside, standing in the rain again. The house loomed behind me, but this time the windows were filled with faces. Dozens, maybe hundreds, all watching me with blank expressions. Their lips moved, mouthing the same phrase, "You're already ours." Then, I was back in the basement, choking on air. The child was gone, but the photographs had shifted again. They no longer showed me alive. Every one of them depicted me marked, skin carved with the symbol, my face slack and empty. The whispers fell silent, replaced by a new sound, a slow, dragging shuffle on the stairs. Something far heavier than the child was coming down.
Every step on the stairs echoed like a hammer striking steel. I aimed the flashlight toward the sound, but the beam flickered weakly, barely slicing through the dark. Then it appeared. Not a child this time, nor a shadow. This was something else. Its body was hunched, grotesquely stretched, arms dragging across the steps, skin pale and sagging as though it had been stitched together from pieces. The head lolled to one side, jaw unhinged, mouth filled with rows of blackened teeth. It reached the basement floor and stopped, swaying slightly, its chest heaving. The mark on my arm burned so hot it felt like fire. The whispers returned, not outside me, but inside. They filled my thoughts, pushing aside my own voice until all that remained was theirs. Stay, stay, stay. I backed into the wall of photographs, glass crunching under my shoes. My hand brushed against one frame and I realized with horror that it wasn't a photograph at all. It was a mirror. Dozens of mirrors, each one clouded, warped, reflecting me differently in every frame. One showed me screaming, another silent, another with my eyes gone, another with the mark carved deeper into my chest. The creature moved closer, dragging its claws across the stone, sparks hissing with each scrape. The air grew colder, heavier, until it felt like drowning. Something inside me broke. I lunged for the basement door, slamming my fists against it until my skin split. The whispers rose to a roar, the creature's breath hot on my neck. And then, silence. The door swung open. I stumbled out into the rain, gasping. The house loomed behind me, still and quiet. My car headlights flickered in the distance. Somehow, impossibly, I was free. But when I looked down at my arm, The mark was still there, burning. In the reflection of the rain-soaked car window, I saw not my own face, but the smooth, blank skin of the child.
They say nothing bad ever happens in Marrow Creek. They also say that about every town that has a dollar store, a diner with one working coffee machine, and a local newspaper running on caffeine and nostalgia. But if there's one thing I've learned in 6 years of covering lost dogs, pothole arguments, and county fair pie contests, it's this: nothing good happens in places that brag about being safe. I'm Miles Archer, reporter, editor, and part-time janitor of the Marrow Creek Gazette. Circulation: your grandma and the guy who delivers propane. My boss, who's also me, insists on keeping the tagline, "Keeping the Creek Clean Since 1957," which is ironic considering half the town's secrets could clog a sewer. When I walked into the office that Monday morning, the air already smelled of printer ink, coffee grounds, and the faint musk of defeat. I was halfway through rewriting an article about a tractor parade when the police scanner crackled to life. Unit 3, possible 1054 on County Road 8, vehicles off the shoulder, one occupant, requesting backup. A 1054, dead body. Now that's something new. Around here, news usually means a cow wandered into someone's yard. A body, though? That's front page. Maybe even page 2 if we're feeling fancy. I grabbed my camera, still sticky from a pie-eating contest last month, and drove my 12-year-old pickup toward County Road 8, where civilization gave up and the cornfields took over. The morning mist hung low, blurring the trees into gray ghosts. I rolled down the window and lit a cigarette. The smoke tasted like anticipation and guilt. When I got there, the sheriff's cruiser was already parked at an angle, lights flashing lazily as if bored. Sheriff Tom Lacey leaned against the hood, arms crossed, talking to his deputy. Lacey was one of those men who looked carved from leftover lumber, square, solid, and a little splintery. He spotted me and groaned. "Miles, Jesus Christ, you smell news before it's cold, don't you?" "I try," I said, clicking my camera. "How cold are we talking?" "Cold enough." He nodded toward a dented red Chevy by the ditch. The windshield was spiderwebbed, door half open. A man sat slumped over the steering wheel like he'd just taken a nap at 60 miles per hour. Except naps don't usually leave your neck looking like that. The guy's throat had been opened clean. No jagged panic cuts, just a single smooth line, neat as surgery. Blood had pooled under him and soaked into the dusty floor mats. The sheriff's deputy was trying not to throw up into a plastic bag. "Jesus," I muttered. "Car accident, huh?" Lacey shot me a look. "You print that before I give a statement, I'll make sure your next headline reads, 'Local man found in ditch.'" "Relax, Sheriff. Just asking questions." "Yeah, and I'm just telling you not to." He walked toward the road to talk to someone on the radio, leaving me with the dead man. I took a closer look. Middle-aged, flannel shirt, calloused hands, a small wedding ring, wallet on the passenger seat, no sign of struggle. Whoever did it wanted him to be found. Lacey came back after a few minutes, rubbing his jaw. "Name's Glenn Walters. Worked over at the grain mill. His wife called in around 6 saying he never came home last night." I raised an eyebrow. "Any idea who'd want to carve him like a Thanksgiving ham?" "Don't know yet. You'll know when I do." "Fair enough," I said, scribbling in my notebook. "You mind if I quote you on that?" He groaned again. "Miles, for once in your miserable life, keep your pen in your pants." By the time I got back to town, word had already spread faster than a church rumor. The diner was buzzing. Old men with weathered hands stirred their coffee with the same spoons they'd used for 40 years, talking low. Every booth whispered about Glenn, the man who fixed their fence, sold them feed, or dated their cousin once. In Marrow Creek, everyone's cousin dated someone. I sat at the counter. Mary, the waitress, poured me coffee with the same enthusiasm as a funeral dirge. "You hear about Glenn?" she asked. "Hard not to," I said. "Heard they found him on County 8. Neck cut clean through," she said it, like she was reading a weather report. Poor Janet. She just put up new curtains last month. "Tragic," I said, sipping. "Do you happen to know anyone who'd hate Glenn enough to redecorate his jugular?" She frowned. "Miles, you're sick. I'm just thorough." She didn't laugh. Nobody ever does. After breakfast, I drove to the Walters house, a single-story place with more lawn guams than self-respect. Yellow tape fluttered across the porch. Janet Walters sat on the steps, smoking like it was her new religion. Her eyes were red, but not from crying, more like she'd stared at something too long and it stared back. "Mrs. Walters," I said gently. "Miles Arger, Gazette." She gave me a sideways glance. "I told the cops everything already." "I'm not a cop. I'm worse. I ask follow-ups." That got a tiny, bitter smile. "You got 5 minutes." She told me Glenn left the bar around 9:30 last night after 2 beers and some small talk about crop prices. Said he wasn't much of a drinker, never got in trouble, didn't have enemies, unless you count the folks at the grain mill. Apparently layoffs were coming and Glenn wasn't shy about speaking up. "You think that's related?" I asked. She shrugged. "I think this town's been rotting for years. Maybe it finally noticed." Her words stuck with me all the way back to the office. Marrow Creek always had that kind of rot, the invisible kind, that smelled faintly of diesel and regret. Everyone here was too polite to say it out loud, but we all knew it. The town wasn't dying, it was being slowly murdered, one foreclosure and overdose at a time. I typed up the article by noon. "Local man found dead in apparent homicide." I kept it clean, factual, and mildly unsettling, just how the Gazette liked it. Circulation jumped by 7 copies that day. A record. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Glenn's open throat, that perfect red line. Something about it didn't fit. No blood spatter on the dashboard, no sign of panic. Whoever did it wasn't just calm, they were careful. The next morning, Lacey called me into his office. "You got a minute?" he said, which translated means, "I'm about to tell you something I shouldn't." He shut the door and tossed a folder on the desk. Inside were photos, crime scene close-ups. I'd seen my share of ugly things, but these were deliberate. Glenn's cut was too clean, like a butcher's hand, like someone who'd done it before. "Autopsy says the blade went in from the left," Lacey said. "Strong hand, precise angle. Any suspects?" "Maybe. But here's the weird part," he leaned in. 2 years ago, a guy named Darrell Hunt turned up dead out by the quarry. Same kind of cut. We wrote it off as suicide. Now, I'm not so sure." I frowned. "Why show me this?" "Because you're going to write about it anyway," he said. "Might as well get the story right." That night, I dug through old Gazette archives. The Darrell Hunt case was buried between a school bake sale and a feature on the county fair. Found dead in his truck, left-handed wound, ruled self-inflicted. No one questioned it. Why would they? This town swallows questions like mud. I drove out to the quarry just before sunset. The air smelled metallic, like blood and rain. The place was abandoned now, just a pit full of still water and broken equipment. I parked by the old fence and stared at the reflection of the sky bleeding into the water. That's when I saw something nailed to a nearby post. A Polaroid. It was a photo of Glenn Walters, sitting in his truck, head slumped, before the cops even got there. The picture was grainy, but it was definitely him. On the back, scrawled in neat black marker, were 3 words. Tell the truth. I froze. The air felt heavier, like the world had paused to see what I'd do next. Someone had been there before me. Someone who knew exactly what happened and wanted me to keep digging. I pocketed the photo and drove back to town, headlights slicing through the dark. Every mailbox, every streetlight, every porch felt like an eye watching. When I reached my office, the front door was already open. Inside, the computer was on. The article draft I'd written that morning had been edited. New text at the bottom, typed in bold. Next one's on you, Miles. I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Then, from somewhere outside, I heard a car engine idle.
You know that feeling when you realize you might be the punchline to a joke you didn't know existed? That's where I was, standing in my dark office, staring at a computer screen that said, "Next one's on you, Miles." I looked around, half expecting some cackling movie villain to pop out from behind the filing cabinet. Nothing. Just the buzz of the fluorescent lights and the smell of printer toner. Familiar. Suffocating. Whoever did this didn't take anything, didn't break in, just left a message, like a cat dropping a dead bird on your doorstep. A gift. I shut down the computer, locked the door, and drove home. My house sat on the edge of town. Cheap rent, bad insulation, and a porch that creaked like an old man's knees. I poured a whiskey, lit a cigarette, and tried to convince myself this was all an elaborate prank. Small-town journalists aren't exactly high-value targets, unless someone really hated my coverage of the county bake sale. Sleep didn't come easy. Every sound felt suspicious. The fridge humming, wind nudging the shutters, the occasional car passing by too slow. Around 3 a.m., I finally drifted off, only to dream about Glenn Walters' face pressed against glass, mouthing something I couldn't hear. The next morning, Sheriff Lacey showed up at the Gazette. He didn't bother knocking. "Miles," he said, stepping in like he owned the place, "you didn't happen to go sightseeing out by the quarry last night, did you?" I sipped my coffee, trying to look casual. "Sightseeing? Me? I can barely afford gas to get to work." He squinted. "Funny, because someone saw your pickup parked there around sundown. Maybe it was my evil twin. He's more outdoorsy." He sighed. "This isn't a joke. You know how it looks when a reporter pokes around an active investigation. Curious, like he's doing his job. Miles, look, Tom, if you're suggesting I had something to do with Glenn's throat problem, I'd like to remind you I have trouble opening envelopes." He wasn't laughing. "You got any enemies?" "Only readers." He rubbed his temples. "Keep your nose clean, Miles. I mean it." After he left, I sat in silence, staring at the typewriter I used for headlines when the power went out. Enemies? I'd written my fair share of unflattering columns, but none worth murder. The worst I'd gotten was a nasty letter from the church about calling their bake sale a diabetes festival. Still, someone wanted me involved. I drove to the grain mill after lunch. The air there always smelled like dust and diesel. A few men were standing by the loading dock, smoking and pretending to work. When they saw me, their conversation dried up faster than the beer at closing time. "Hey, fellas," I said, "just checking in about Glenn Walters." One of them, a big guy in overalls, spat on the ground. "We already talked to the sheriff." Yeah, well, I'm not the sheriff. I'm the guy who makes him look bad when he misses something. That earned a chuckle from the skinny one beside him. You're that newspaper guy, right? Archer? Guilty, I said. Any idea who'd want Glenn dead? Depends. You asking for the paper or for yourself? That tone, the kind that smells like gasoline before a match. For the paper. He shrugged. Glenn was a good worker. Kept to himself mostly, but he was running his mouth lately. Said the company was shorting hours, cutting corners. Thought he was going to blow the whistle. Blow the whistle to who? The sheriff? Don't know. Maybe to you. That gave me pause. To me? He nodded. Said he was thinking about bringing something down to the Gazette. Proof or whatever. I stared at him. When was this? Day before he died. Back in my truck, I stared through the windshield, the weight of that sinking in. Glenn was going to talk to me. About what? Corruption? Cover-ups? Maybe someone didn't want that story printed. When I got back to the office, there was an envelope sitting under the door. No name, no address, just 2 Miles Archer, written in neat handwriting. Inside were 3 things. A flash drive, a note that said you wanted the truth, and a Polaroid of me sitting in my truck that morning at the grain mill. I froze. My stomach sank somewhere near my knees. Whoever this was, they weren't just watching me. They were close. Close enough to follow, to photograph, to drop things off without being seen. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. It contained 1 video file, time-stamped from the night Glenn died. Grainy dashcam footage. Glenn driving down County Road 8. A pair of headlights behind him. He slows, pulls over, rolls down the window. The other car stops beside him. You can't see the driver, just a dark outline leaning in. Then Glenn jerks. Blood splatters. The knife flashes once. The killer steps back, calm, wipes the blade on a rag, and walks back to their car. The camera catches their face for a split second as they pass the headlights. Sheriff Tom Lacey. I hit pause. My brain refused to process. I played it again. Same thing. Lacey's face, clear as daylight. Unless someone was wearing a mask, which was possible, I guess, but this was no Halloween prank. The note's words rang in my head. You wanted the truth. I closed the laptop and poured another drink. If that video was real, I was sitting on something nuclear. If it wasn't, someone was trying really hard to frame the only man in town who still had a badge and half a conscience. And either way, someone was watching me watch it. I needed air. I went to the diner, my default panic shelter. The place was half empty, except for Mary and a few farmers discussing weather conspiracies. She gave me a look when I sat down. You look like hell, she said. I've been promoted from reporter to target. She blinked. Target? Forget it. I'm just having a day. As I spared my coffee, I noticed a white pickup parked across the street. Tinted windows, engine idling, no driver visible. It stayed there for 10 minutes. I pretended not to notice, but my hand shook every time I lifted the cup. When I finally walked out, the truck was gone. Just tire marks and paranoia left behind. That night I didn't go home. I drove to a motel 2 towns over, a place that smelled like bleach and heartbreak. I locked the door, double-checked the window, and watched the video again. Then again. Each time that face looked more like Lacey's, calm, collected, efficient. Not the man who swore by procedure and drank black coffee like holy water. Could he be the killer, or was I being played? At 2 a.m., I got a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? Silence. Then a familiar voice. Miles, we need to talk. Lacey? Not over the phone. Meet me at the bridge by Miller's Pond. Half an hour. Click. I sat there staring at the phone, every instinct screaming, don't go. But curiosity has always been my worst addiction. That and bourbon. The bridge was deserted when I got there. The pond reflected the moonlight in dull silver ripples. My breath fogged in the cold. I kept my headlights on, partly to see, mostly to scare off whatever raccoon gods ruled the night. Then, footsteps. Lacey stepped out of the shadows, hat pulled low, face unreadable. You came? I called. That's how it works. He looked around nervously. You got something you shouldn't? Oh, you mean a front row seat to your late night hobbies? His eyes narrowed. You think I killed Glenn? I think your face is all over a video that says you did. He froze. For a moment, all I heard was wind in the creak of the bridge. Then softly, they got to you too? Who's they? He didn't answer, just stared past me at the woods, like expecting someone to step out. Miles, that footage isn't real. I swear on my badge. They're setting me up. And if you don't stop digging, they'll set you up next. I'm touched by the concern, but you'll forgive me if I don't take ethics lessons from a man whose face is trending in my nightmares. He took a step forward, voice low. You want the truth? Start at the mill. There's more going on there than you know. Glenn found proof, but it wasn't about layoffs. It was about... A gunshot cracked through the night. Lacey jerked back, eyes wide, a red bloom spreading across his shirt. He collapsed against the railing.
You ever have one of those moments where your brain tries to do math it was never built for? Like, if my boss just died and my computer is typing messages by itself, how screwed am I on a scale from 1 to existential crisis? That was me, sitting in my empty newsroom at 2 in the morning, staring at the words warehouse.move on the screen. The last time curiosity got the better of me, a man's throat was open in a Chevy. The time before that, someone left a Polaroid like a calling card. So naturally, I clicked it. The video opened with shaky footage. Someone walking through a dimly lit warehouse, flashlight beam jittering over crates stacked to the ceiling, each one stamped with the same label, Property of Merrow County Agri-Processing. Then the light stopped on something else, rows of black barrels, unmarked except for a single white stencil. D12. The person filming pried one open with a crowbar. The lid popped, releasing a chemical hiss. Inside, something thick and dark, swirling, almost oily. Then the camera turned, and for 1 second I saw a face reflected in the flashlight beam. Glenn Walters. Alive. Terrified. He whispered something, barely audible. They're dumping it in the creek. Then the video cut to static. I sat back, heart hammering. Dumping it in the creek. Merrow Creek, the one we drink from, fish from, named the damn town after. I opened the drawer where I keep the old police scanner, turned it on, and waited. Nothing but static and the occasional dispatch about a loose cow. Whatever was going on, it was buried deep. Lacey had said the mill was hiding something, and Glenn had found proof. Now both were dead. So, yeah, naturally, I decided to go there next. Because who needs survival instincts when you've got journalistic integrity and crippling loneliness? The grain mill sat on the outskirts of town, have its windows boarded up, humming faintly like it was dreaming of better days. I parked behind the silos, flashlight in one hand, recorder in the other. The main door was locked, but the side entrance had a padlock so old it could have been defeated by a strong opinion. Inside, the air was thick, metallic, sour, wrong. I stepped carefully, following the sound of a low hum deeper into the dark. The warehouse was exactly like the video. Crates stacked in uneven towers, black barrels with white stencils, D12. I unscrewed one just enough to catch a whiff. The smell hit like a brick wall. Chemical, rotten, unnatural. I gagged and stumbled back, the taste burning my tongue. That's when a voice came from behind me. "Looking for something, Miles?" I froze. Janet Walter stepped out from behind a crate holding a flashlight. She looked calmer than any widow should. In her other hand, a pistol. "Janet," I said carefully, raising my palms, "I was, just fact-checking." She smiled, didn't reach her eyes. "You shouldn't have opened that barrel." Well, in my defense, I open a lot of things I shouldn't. Emails, beers, moral wounds. "Shut up." She came closer, the beam of her flashlight slicing across my face. "You saw the video? Warehouse.move? Yeah, Oscar-worthy stuff." She nodded slowly. "Glenn filmed that. He found out the mill was dumping chemical waste into the creek. Old government contracts, fake paperwork, all signed off on by people who don't exist anymore. When he told me, I said to keep quiet, but he couldn't help himself. He wanted to go public, and then he wound up in a ditch," I said. She didn't deny it. "Was it you?" She sighed. "You think I'd slit my husband's throat? No, I loved Glenn, but the people he worked for didn't. When he came to you, they panicked. Lacey was on their payroll to clean it up. He was supposed to make it look like an accident. When he hesitated, she trailed off, eyes flickering. They shot him too." I felt my mouth go dry. "And you?" "I took the video, and the flash drive. I thought if I sent it to you, you'd publish it, expose them, make them burn. Congratulations, you've successfully made me the next dead guy on their list." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "You already were." Something clanged in the distance, metal against metal. Janet turned her head sharply, gun raised. "Who's there?" Silence. Then footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate. A figure emerged from the dark, flashlight beam cutting through dust. Deputy Harris, Lacey's second in command. "Good evening," he said casually, as if we just run into each other at the diner. "You two sure picked the wrong night to play detective." He had his sidearm drawn, steady as a statue. Janet's gun wavered slightly. "You bastard! You killed Tom." Harris shrugged. "Tom stopped being useful. You know how it is. Too much conscience, not enough overtime." He looked at me next. "And Miles here? Well, you made yourself famous." I tried to keep my voice steady. "So, what's the plan? 2 more bodies and another cover-up?" He smiled thinly. "Nah, this time it's simpler. Fire. Electrical fault. Local reporter and grieving widow caught trespassing. Tragic, really." Then he raised the gun. Janet fired first. The sound shattered the air, echoing off the walls. Harris dropped behind a crate, returned fire. Sparks danced across the metal. I dove behind a forklift, adrenaline roaring in my ears. "Janet!" I yelled. No answer. Just smoke and the smell of burning oil. When I peeked out, Harris was down, bleeding, breathing, but alive. Janet was lying face down, motionless, a dark pool spreading beneath her. I crawled to her side, shaking. "Janet, hey, hey!" Her eyes flickered open, unfocused. She pressed something into my hand, a folded piece of paper, then exhaled one long, trembling breath. Gone. I unfolded the note with shaking fingers. Coordinates. A location on the edge of town. I looked back. Harris was moving again, groaning, hand reaching for his gun. I didn't wait to see if he made it. I ran. By dawn, I reached the coordinates, an old barn near the edge of the creek. The water glimmered faintly in the first light. Calm, beautiful, and if Glenn was right, poisoned. Inside the barn were more barrels, dozens of them, some split open, leaking black sludge into the dirt. The smell was unbearable. Flies swarmed the corners like a living shadow. I took photos, hundreds of them, evidence, proof, enough to bury every man in this town who'd sold their soul for a government contract. When I turned to leave, I noticed something on the ground, a box of files labeled Project D12. I opened it. Inside were reports, dates, signatures. The company had been dumping experimental byproducts for years, stuff that wasn't supposed to exist outside of military labs. They'd falsified inspection results, bribed officials, and used the creek to wash away the evidence. And right there, on the last page, a signature I recognized. Thomas Lacey. But underneath, someone else's. Miles Archer. I froze. It was my name, my signature. Same handwriting, same stroke, forged or maybe copied from something. My stomach twisted. Whoever orchestrated this had planned it down to the last detail. Glenn, Lacey, Janet, they were all cleanup jobs, and I was next on their list. Footsteps behind me. Slow. Heavy. I turned. Deputy Harris, pale and limping, framed in the doorway. Blood down his sleeve, eyes wild. "You shouldn't have come here," he rasped. "Yeah, I'm starting to get that a lot." He raised the gun. Click. Empty. I didn't wait for a second try. I swung the camera at his face. It connected with a dull thud, and he went down hard. I ran out the door, down the slope toward the creek. Behind me, the barn crackled, flames licking up the walls. Somehow, the bastard had lit it before following me. I reached the water's edge, gasping. The reflection of the fire danced across the surface like liquid gold. I looked down, then froze. The water wasn't clear anymore. It was black, thick, shimmering like oil. And in that reflection, I saw movement, ripples spreading outward, slow, deliberate, like something waking beneath. No, not something. Someone. Because as I leaned closer, the face that looked back wasn't mine. It was Glenn Walters. Smiling. Then the world went white as the barn exploded.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the 3 a.m. tapes. Today's story is about a cave diver who went down alone, chasing solitude, and found something waiting for him in the dark. If you ever feel the urge to explore where no one's been before, remember this story before you go under.
Cave diving wasn't supposed to feel like dying. That's what I told myself as I stood at the edge of the sinkhole, the morning air cold against my wetsuit, the water below still and dark as spilled ink. I'd done plenty of dives before. Reef systems, wrecks, even a few cave entries. But this one was different. There was no one else here. No buddy to check my gear, no instructor. Just me, the sound of my own breathing, and a small entry slit in the limestone that looked like it wanted to swallow me whole. I told people I was doing it to push my limits. Truth is, I just wanted quiet. Life on the surface had started to feel loud. Notifications, expectations, people asking me what's next. Down here, there would be none of that. Just me and the silence. The first few meters were peaceful.
My flashlight carved clean paths through suspended particles. My fins barely stirred the silt. Every breath echoed in my skull. Long inhale, slow exhale, like the rhythm of something alive. At 10 meters, the light from above vanished. The world turned into gradients of black and gray. I could see the rock walls close around me, jagged like ribs. I checked my gauge, took another breath, and pressed forward. The passage narrowed, forcing me to twist sideways. My tank scraped limestone, leaving white scars on the rock. I didn't like how tight it was. The way the water pressed against my shoulders, the way the silt clouded up and blinded me whenever I moved too fast. Then I noticed something. The beam from my torch caught marks on the wall. Not erosion, not coral growths, but scratches, parallel lines, some shallow, some deep, like fingernails dragged in panic. I brushed them with my glove. The grooves were recent. I exhaled slowly, bubbles brushing my mask. I told myself maybe another diver had been here first, but the records said no one had mapped this far. A sudden vibration passed through the water, faint, rhythmic, like a heartbeat pulsing through the cave. I turned off my light to listen, but all I heard was my own breath and the slow tick of my pressure gauge. When I turned the torch back on, the silt had settled, and the scratches looked deeper. There's a strange kind of silence underwater, not the absence of sound, but the distortion of it. Every movement, every click of a gauge, every bubble feels like it's happening inside your head. That's why, when I first heard the whisper, I thought it was my own mind leaking into the noise. It came from behind me, faint, stretched thin by water. Just one word, my name, Josh. I froze. The sound vibrated against my skull like it was coming through the regulator itself. I turned, sweeping the torch behind me. Nothing. Just my trail of disturbed silt and the narrow passage I'd entered through. Probably my radio, I told myself, though I knew it wasn't on. I'd switched it off when I descended. No signal down here anyway. I swam forward, trying to focus on my breathing. But the air hissed irregularly now, like it didn't want to come through the tank. My chest tightened. My heartbeat was too fast. Panic in a cave is a death sentence, so I forced my breaths to slow. In, out, in, out. Then I saw it. A glove drifting through the dark, fingers curled slightly, the wrist torn. I reached out, thinking maybe someone had dropped it. But when I touched it, the wrist joint bent the wrong way. My stomach lurched. I backed off, shining my light away, only to see something else. My own glove. The exact same make, same tear, floating just a few feet ahead. That's when I realized it was my glove. Mine. I looked down. Both my hands were gloved, but the one in front of me matched perfectly, like a reflection. The whisper came again, closer this time. Don't leave. My light flickered. The cave trembled, or maybe it was me shaking. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsing in and out as though the entire place was alive. I turned to retreat, but the way I'd come was gone. The tunnel had collapsed. No, not collapsed, just wasn't there anymore. It was a flat wall of limestone, smooth, unbroken. Something moved in the corner of my light. Not a person, just a ripple, a distortion, like the water itself was forming a figure. I blinked hard, and it was gone. Then I felt it, a hand on my shoulder. I don't remember swimming. I just remember bursting upward, my body screaming for air, clawing through the blackness until I broke through into open water, or what looked like it. At first, I thought I'd surfaced. My regulator popped free, and I gulped a mouthful of something. It wasn't air. It was thick, metallic, almost oily. The light around me wasn't sunlight either. It shimmered wrong, like it came from below instead of above. I floated there, gasping, trying to make sense of it. My dive computer said I was still 25 meters down. Impossible. I looked up and saw the surface suspended above me like a mirror. My bubbles rose halfway, then froze in place, hanging motionless in the water. I started to panic again. I needed to get out. I kicked toward that false surface, reaching for it. But when my hand broke through, I didn't feel air. I felt fingers, cold, slick, gripping mine. I yanked back, but something held on. The light shifted, and for a split second, I saw faces in the mirror. Divers, dozens of them, all watching me. But their masks were filled with water, their eyes wide and still. One of them looked just like me. I screamed, but the sound stayed trapped in my mask. I ripped it off, lungs burning, bubbles freezing mid-rise. The reflection stared back, my double, mouthing something silently. Stay. I don't remember what happened next. I woke up on the shore, hours later, mask gone, tank empty, my dive light cracked in half. The local rescue team said there was no record of my descent, no tracking beacon, nothing on sonar. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear bubbles rising and stopping midway. And when I dream, I see the reflection. It smiles before I do.
Welcome back to the 3 a.m. tapes. Hope y'all are doing well. Tonight's tape is an eerie one. A young man begins to suspect terrifying things from his mother. I won't say much, and I'll just let the tape do the talking. Before I play the tape, comment down below any eerie things you've seen in your neighborhood. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks, guys, and enjoy. I never liked staying up late, but tonight I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet, too still, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. From my bedroom, I caught the faint, sweet scent of coffee. Strange, Mom had never brewed a cup at midnight before. My curiosity got the better of me, and I crept down the hallway, each step slow, trying not to wake the sleeping shadows. The kitchen was empty, except for her. She sat at the dining table, a cup of steaming coffee cradled in her hands. Her hair had streaks of gray now, though it wasn't fully silver. It framed her face in a way that caught the dim light eerily. And then I saw it. Her smile, wide, unnervingly broad, too perfect, stretching in a way that made my stomach drop. It wasn't warmth. It wasn't love. It was wrong. I froze, my breath shallow. "James," she said softly. The tone was familiar yet twisted. My name on her lips sounded like something I hadn't heard in years, like a shadow had taken over the voice I loved. I nodded dumbly, pretending I was sleepy, though my heart raced like a trapped animal. She sipped her coffee slowly, deliberately, her eyes tracing me without blinking. Something about the way she moved made the shadows behind her stretch unnaturally. I left quietly, each step heavier than the last, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the house had changed, that Mom had changed. That night, I lay awake listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, the creak of floorboards, and the faint sound of her humming, soft and wrong, echoing in my ears. The unease wouldn't leave me. The memory of that smile followed me into the dark, curling around my thoughts, cold
and invasive. I knew something was off, but I had no idea how deep this went or how far I was about to fall into it.
The next few days blurred together in an unsettling routine. I noticed subtle changes in Mom. Her humming continued, a song I didn't recognize, one she had never known before. Objects moved slightly when she wasn't looking. Chairs shifted an inch here, a cup tilted there. I tried to rationalize it, stress, age, exhaustion, but the gnawing unease in my chest grew. I felt watched even when I was alone, as if something hidden in her shadow had eyes for me. One evening, curiosity and dread drove me to check her room while she was out. Her diary lay open on the floor. The handwriting was jagged, frantic. Words sprawled across the page. He watches, he waits. The vessel feeds. Soon all will bend. My stomach churned. I dropped the diary and stepped back, heart hammering. The air thickened, pressing against my lungs. I tried confronting her during dinner. "Mom, you're acting different," I said, voice trembling. She looked up at me, smiled so wide it stretched too far, and shrugged as if nothing was wrong. My stomach churned. That smile, it wasn't her. Something inside her had shifted, something malevolent. I could feel it pressing against me, a cold, invisible weight that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. I started watching her more closely, noting every subtle twitch, every unnatural movement. Shadows seemed to cling to her form, the way she moved, the soft hum that followed her, the glint of that horrific smile. I realized I could no longer deny it. My mother was no longer entirely my mother. Something had taken root, creeping, patient, and horrifying. Sleep became impossible. Each night, the house felt alive, shifting and breathing around me. I documented everything. The whispers, low and indistinct, shadows that seemed to move independently, doors that creaked open on their own. Mom's presence was constant, watching, humming, smiling. I tried reasoning with her, pleading, asking her what was wrong, but the answers were always that same unsettling smile, fixed and unblinking, like a predator assessing prey. Last night, I saw her standing in the kitchen. She wasn't moving, just staring at the table. The coffee cup trembled in her hand. A low, gurgling hum vibrated in the air, something that made my teeth ache. I realized with a sick certainty that I had been lying to myself. My mother was possessed. The thought made my chest tighten and my stomach knot. Every corner of the house felt tainted. The living room, where I had played as a child, now seemed hostile. Shadows pooled unnaturally. I could hear whispers in corners I didn't occupy. Her smile haunted every reflection. Even when she wasn't in the room, I felt her eyes on me, that twisted joy lingering in the air. I started to fear sleep, knowing that even in dreams she could reach me. I tried calling friends, asking if they'd come over, but fear held me back. How could I explain this without sounding insane? How could I tell anyone that my mother, my own flesh and blood, had become something other? I felt the first stirrings of desperation. Something had to be done, and soon. Tonight, I decided I could no longer wait. I grabbed a baseball bat and positioned myself outside her bedroom door, heart hammering. The house creaked with every passing second, each sound magnified.
as if the walls were mocking me. I could hear her humming in the kitchen, slow and melodic. But the tune was wrong, each note curling into the shadows like smoke. I stepped inside. The door to the kitchen was ajar. She sat at the table, coffee cup in hand, her smile impossibly wide. I froze. The sight of her, so familiar yet horrifying, made my limbs heavy. She tilted her head, as if studying me, her eyes cold and calculating. "James," she whispered, dragging the word across the room like a blade. Panic surged. I raised the bat, shaking, ready to fight something I didn't understand. I stumbled back, tripping over the edge of a rug, and the cup rattled on the table. The humming intensified, twisting into a laugh, slow, menacing, and filled with intent. My mind screamed at me to leave, to run, to escape while I still could. And that's exactly what I did. I bolted, not daring to look back, feeling the weight of her stare pressing into my back as I fled. I reached the front door, but it wouldn't open. My hand shook as I tried the knob again, harder this time. The lights flickered violently, shadows stretching across the walls like elongated fingers. Behind me, the humming became a chorus, distorted, monstrous. The laughter merged with the hum, echoing in every corner of the house. Finally, the door gave way. I burst into the night, gasping, stumbling into the darkness. The streetlights flickered weakly, offering no comfort. The house loomed behind me, silent now, but I could feel it, waiting, patient, alive. That smile, Mom's smile, burned into my mind, impossible to erase. I ran until my lungs ached, until I could no longer hear the echoes. But even here, the memory followed me. The hum, that chilling smile, the impossible look in her eyes. It lingered. I don't know where I can go, who I can trust. All I know is that something inside my mother isn't human anymore, and it hasn't finished with me. I fear tonight was only the beginning. I'm writing this because I don't know how long my phone battery will last. And honestly, talking to someone, anyone, might keep me sane. I got into the elevator at around 11 p.m., heading down from the 7th floor of my apartment building. Nothing unusual. I remember being tired, rubbing my eyes, leaning against the handrail. The elevator dinged, the doors slid shut, and I hit G. The ride felt normal until it didn't. About halfway down, the lift shuddered. Just a tiny hiccup, the kind you barely notice. Then the doors opened. I stepped out, or tried to. Something stopped me. Not physically, just instinct. The hallway in front of me was wrong. The lights were dimmer than they should be, flickering softly like old fluorescent tubes. The carpet wasn't the same pattern. The framed fire escape map on the wall looked older, like it had yellowed over time. I checked the sign above the elevator. 7. Floor 7. I'd just come from floor 7. I pressed the elevator button again. The light blinked sluggishly, like it was struggling. When the doors opened, I stepped inside fast. The panel buttons looked normal enough, so I hit G again. The descent was smoother this time. Too smooth. Quiet. Like the elevator was gliding on air.
No cables, no machinery, just drifting. Then the doors opened. The sign above the hallway read 7. But the hallway was longer this time, at least twice as long. The overhead lights barely reached the far end, leaving the last 20 meters swallowed in shadow. Something moved down there. I didn't wait to see what. I jumped back inside, slammed closed door, and pressed 1 instead, jabbing the button until my thumb hurt. The elevator hummed, stopped, opened. Same floor, same sign, but now the lights were off at the far end, pitch black. And I swear I heard footsteps approaching through the dark. The doors didn't close. They stayed open, and something started walking toward me. I don't know how I'm still functioning. I'm shaking so badly my fingers barely hit the right keys. When I saw those footsteps in the dark, I hit every button on the panel, all of them. The elevator finally lurched upward like something had kicked it from below. The doors slammed shut mid-footstep. I don't know if something was actually there or if my mind filled in the gaps. But the sound, it wasn't right. Too slow. Too heavy. The elevator stopped again. The doors opened. Floor 7.2. That's what I'm calling it. The sign still said 7, but someone had scratched deep gouges through the metal, like nails or a screwdriver. The hallway looked stretched even more, and the walls had a subtle inward curve, like they were leaning toward each other. The carpet squished beneath my shoes, damp. That's when I realized this floor smelled different, like mildew, like an old basement. I took one step out, thinking maybe the stairs were real here. A low hum vibrated through the walls. Not electrical, more like breathing. Slow, wet breaths. The elevator behind me dinged softly, almost apologetic, like it wanted me back inside. I didn't need convincing. I got in, hit G, then 1, 2, 3, all of them. The elevator started moving again, but not vertically. I could feel it. My stomach stayed level, no shift, no weight change. We were going sideways, or diagonal, or nowhere. The lights inside flickered. The reflections in the metal panel distorted slightly. My face stretched just a hair too long. I felt a vibration under my feet. Something was brushing the underside of the elevator floor. I pressed my back against the wall, staring down at the seams in the metal. The vibrations turned into tapping, slow, deliberate taps, like someone was knocking from below. Then a voice whispered through the speaker grill, "Next floor," and the elevator stopped.
The doors opened before I could think. This floor was brighter, almost too bright. The overhead fluorescents buzzed violently. The hallway looked familiar again, like the real 7th floor. Except all the apartment doors were missing, just blank walls where they should have been. I tried to shout for help. My voice came back wrong, like a bad echo. A half second behind me, repeating in a slightly different tone. Too deep. I turned around. The elevator doors were still open. But the interior was different. Warped. The handrail twisted upward like melted plastic. The floor slanted subtly downward toward the back as though sinking. As I watched, the panel lights flickered and rearranged themselves. The numbers slid across the metal like ink underwater. Every button became 7. I stumbled backward.
The hallway stretched again, longer. The lights at the far end flickered and then went out one by one, click, 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 moving toward me. I ran back to the elevator, but froze when I saw the inside. My reflection was still in the back panel, but it wasn't moving like me. I lifted my arm. It didn't. It just stared at me. Mouth slowly widening into a too wide grin. Behind me, the hallway lights reached the last bulb, the one above my head. It flickered. My reflection lifted its finger and pointed upward. I heard breathing above me, in the ceiling panels. Slow. Wet. Patient. Then something pressed down the panel from above, bending the metal inward like something was pushing its face through. And the elevator doors began to close. But my reflection didn't disappear. It stepped out toward me,